If you have a great day in a great space with a great sound and a nice audience, and your feelings are on the surface, and you just want to kind of embrace the audience with it. I think that's the utmost.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Beautiful Work Podcast. I am your host, Dan Krikorian. Each episode we feature a special guest from all walks of life, and we ask them to explore the ins and outs, ups and downs, the trials and the triumphs of their chosen field. Writers, musicians, coaches, business owners, and everything in between, we peel back the curtain to hear their stories, to walk their paths, to find out how they breathe life into their beautiful work. Well, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Beautiful Work Podcast. Today's guest is a world-renowned Spanish-style guitarist, plays many different styles, but Manuel Barrueco is one of the most acclaimed classical-style guitarists in the world, has been called by multiple outlets as one of the best, if not the best, living Spanish-style, classical-style guitarists, and we had a great conversation, and it was an honor to get a chance to talk with him. So before we get to that, those of you new to the podcast, thanks so much for coming along and listening. Please feel free to go to the website, dankrikorian.com or beautifulworkpodcast.com. They take you to the same spot, and check out all the other episodes that are on the website. You could also find us on iTunes and Spotify, and if you could pass it along or rate it, that really is a easy and free way to help the podcast out, help others find it if you're enjoying it, and would be so kind. It shouldn't bother you too much to rate it if you're on iTunes and find it, and so I'd appreciate it. As well as this podcast, our new album, Grandeur, which was my 5th release, has been doing well, and we're excited to begin playing it live, and got a lot of shows in the spring and summer lined up, and so getting ready for that. So if you could, or if you want to check us out, dankrikorian.com, all the shows and info is there, and you can find my new album, Grandeur, on iTunes. Okay, without further ado, let's get to the show. Manuel Barrueco has been internationally recognized as one of the most important guitarists of our time. His unique artistry has been continually described as that of a superb instrumentalist and a superior and elegant musician. Manuel began playing the guitar at the age of 8, and he attended the Esteban Salas Conservatory in his native Cuba. He immigrated with his family to the U.S. in 1967 as a political refugee, and he later completed his advanced studies at the Peabody Conservatory of Music, where he now shares his love for music with a small number of exceptionally gifted guitarists from all over the world. His career has been dedicated to bringing the guitar to some of the main musical centers of the world. And in 3 decades of playing concerts, he has performed across the United States, from the New World Symphony in Miami to the Seattle Symphony, from the Hollywood Bowl with the Los Angeles Philharmonic to New York's Lincoln Center. And he's appeared with such prestigious orchestras as the Philadelphia Orchestra and with the Boston Symphony. His international tours have taken him as well to some of the most important places. Highlights include the Royal Albert Hall in London, Teatro Real in Madrid and Palo de la Música in Barcelona. Manuel has received multiple Grammy nominations and also been awarded a Latin Grammy, as well as being the recipient of the United States Artists Fontenot's Fellowship for Artistic Excellence. He is here today to share with us his thoughts on a brilliant career, what it's like to travel the world, and why he fell in love with the New York Yankees. Okay, I am joined now by Manuel Barrueco. Manuel, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, we're going to talk all about your career and about music, and there's so much that you've done, but I was happy in my research about you and going back through your past that you are a big baseball fan. Is that correct?
I was more than I am now. I mean, I can tell you that, when I was a teenager, I remember one year I was a Yankee fan, and I listened to or went to or watched on television every single game of the Yankees that year. And, So then later on, in more recent times, it's been more difficult, it's been more difficult to follow things. But this past summer, I had a great experience. I went to, for the first time, I went to Fenway Park in Boston and to see the Yankees play Boston. And that was really an amazing experience. I gather from this, are you a baseball fan?
I am. So, yeah. As well as I'm actually I coach college basketball as well. So I'm just a sports fan in general, but I am a big baseball fan. And so, and last 2 summers ago, I went to Fenway, and it's quite a place to see a game.
It really is. It's like a museum, It's and also being a Yankee fan and all the great games, that were played between these two teams, So I remember like walking into the seats, from through the tunnel, and the first thing that I was seeing was the right field, and there's so many memories with that. And then you walk in and there's the green wall, and it was really an amazing experience over there.
And why a Yankee fan?
Probably my best guess would be that's my father was a big baseball fan, and that's the team that he I think most people that I know in my family, since I was a kid in Cuba, that they seem to be Yankee fans, and I guess that's why. And okay. And then when we moved, when we came to the U.S. We were in Miami for less than 1 year, and then in '68 we moved to New Jersey, and to the New Jersey and then New York area. So it was them and the Mets, but again, the Yankees were such a famous team, and
sure
that all these famous players. So, but basically that I think it was because my father especially, was a Yankee fan.
Makes sense, and the fact that you obviously were in New Jersey and were right there, that makes even more sense.
It was, the games were the ones that were televised where I lived. Also the Mets as well. But
sure. Well, good. Well, let's talk about music a little bit, or a lot of it. And if you could you maybe take us back? And do you remember the first time that you performed live on a stage and what that felt like to you, what that experience was like?
Oh my God, I remember like it was yesterday. It was a student recital, and just played a couple of pieces, and the way that this is obviously when I was a kid in Cuba. I was 11, and I was always a very, very shy child, and I I didn't like for people to look at me, you know. I mean,
Okay.
I,
Yeah.
I had a lot of hang-ups, and that was one. I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't want it to look at, and I knew that once I was on that stage, people were going to look at me whether I liked it or not.
Uh-huh.
So I the way it was sort of like an old colonial house. You know, it had like it was probably somebody's mansion at one time, and what was the must have been like maybe a dining room or something. And but it was open in the back towards a kind of garden or patio really. And I was I was behind that, and from behind that I could see the stage and I could see the public. And I just remember that it was like like an out of body experience. I just out of and I just remember walking into the place and into the stage when my turn came, and I was just it just again it was otherworldly the way it felt to me. Because I mean, when you're a kid, at least when I was a kid, I mean, it's not like I was afraid to screw up or anything like that. I mean, I didn't. That wasn't a thought that crossed my mind. Not because I thought I wouldn't. I just didn't worry about it. But it was just being there, kind of naked in front of everybody, being looked at. That was really it was really intense for me. It was
Yeah. And how did or when did you start to feel more comfortable on a stage?
Oh boy, I don't know. It's taking me a while, and it's taking me a while, and I mean like many years, and because I'm even hesitant to say yes, I am comfortable on the stage.
Sure.
But I guess to a certain extent, I guess I am. I mean, it's always. I mean, of course, there's a difference between on the stage, with no public and with the public, and so no, it's taking me a long time. It's a. I think it's a difficult thing to do. You go out there to play and you want to do well, and this thing that we do, I guess, similar to sports. It's unpredictable how your body's going to function on that day. So it's always a surprise. It's always a surprise, and sometimes I right before I go out, I'm warming up, and it feels like I cannot play the instrument, and then I go out, and then it's a great concert for me, for my sons, So it's and I told you something that never seems to work. When I say I'm going to go out and play a great concert, I don't think that ever has happened. It's just and I think it's when I speaking of baseball and sports, I mean I often watch athletes wondering about the state of mind and how they what place they try to go to so that the body can do what it can do, and I find that fascinating. And it's certainly like that with playing an instrument. You have to find a balance between directing to your body, but not excessively so.
Sure.
And trusting it that it will do what you trained it to do if you just allow it to do it and try not to doubt it, but that's easier said than done.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a great connecting point. I myself coached basketball and played basketball, and then I'm also a musician, and I see a lot of the similarities of you spend so much time practicing, whether it's, baseball or basketball or whatever, and then you got to perform during the game, and you have to find that balance of being prepared, but not overly, stressed. And it actually reminds me of a quote in one of your past interviews. You talked about always trying to find sort of the middle ground between tension and relaxation. And so like when you're trying to perform something, and could you maybe explain a little bit more?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think it's simple. I think when you overburden, I don't know if overburden is the word, but when one tries too hard to do something too intensely to the point that it doesn't allow the body to do what it can. I think the body works best when it's relaxed and when one trusts it instead of trying to force it. And that's basically what it is. And also so like for example, even when one is performing under pressure, the tendency, I think, tends to be to tighten up, and to try to achieve things that way when it's that's never as good as the other way. To try to relax, to try to kind of fake it until you make it, until you are actually relaxed.
Sure.
I have a question for you. So you're a musician also?
Yes.
And you play basketball?
Yes.
Why not just play volleyball and go all the way to try to break a finger?
I used to play volleyball too.
Well, I have a story for you. When I actually have two. I don't think they're broken, but they look like they're broken, which is my thumb and my A finger, ring finger on the right hand. And the A finger, it happened at Peabody when I was studying playing volleyball.
Uh-huh.
Now, I cannot believe that in music school, the only sports that they had for the students were volleyball. So sure enough, in one of those volleys, just the ball just pushed my finger back and it swelled up like crazy. And it even looks dislocated to this day. So, but I think I can't believe that's what they had.
That's funny. It's true, because your fingers are the most important thing, and volleyball, people break fingers all the time.
Of course, it's crazy. I mean, so.
Yeah. Well, so the guitar, looking back, what was it about the guitar specifically that drew you in, as opposed to, say, the piano or another instrument?
Well, I think in a practical way, I was much more exposed to it than the piano. I mean, the guitar and the piano in music in general, it's actually very popular in Cuba. But for the guitar, there's an affinity with the guitar. It's in many ways, it's really a part of the culture. I guess obviously from the Spanish influence. And so my sisters began. Actually, it wasn't just my sisters. It was also my cousins also had begun to take guitar lessons, and therefore my sisters wanted to. And I would sit there just mesmerized looking at the lessons, So I asked for lessons, and that's how it happened. But I do remember just thinking how beautiful it was, and I have this memory of as a child, I don't know how old I was, maybe 8 or 9, just going to bed and just kind of like thinking and in kind of dreaming away about the guitar and the way it sounded. I remember also Leo Brouwer, the composer. He's Cuban as well, and I had the opportunity when I was a kid to meet him and sometimes even play for him, even though he wasn't from Santiago de Cuba, where I'm from. He was from Havana. So I remember seeing him play a piece just called Folios by Sanz, in the Spanish Baroque composer. And I just remember that's the music that I was hearing in my head in bed, as I said. I just remember just hearing that in my head and just thinking it was, I was just captivated by it. I just,
sure.
It's not like I said, this is so beautiful. I mean, I never said that. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. It's what it was.
The artist and author Aaron Morgenstern once said, "You may tell a tale that takes up residence in someone's soul, becomes their blood and self and purpose. That tale will move them and drive them, and who knows what they might do because of it, because of your words. That is your role, your gift." Manuel Barrueco's gift is undoubtedly his ability to tell stories through music. From his early years in Cuba to his illustrious career playing on some of the world's biggest and most renowned stages, he has been telling his stories through music. I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for people and individuals who can tell a good story. I idolize the Bob Dylans, Mark Twains, or my family members or friends who can capture a room with their elegant tales. Yet Manuel's way of telling a story is unique to those, different than telling with words or lyrics. Manuel speaks solely through his music and his guitar. It's fascinating to watch and hear as Manuel takes listeners through emotional ups and downs, most of the time all by himself on stage. And how truly moving it is to simply sit and listen to Manuel play, a master at work with a fantastic way of connecting with people and telling his story. As the author Libby Bray once wrote, "There is no greater power on this earth than story." It's interesting because when you watch, like when I watch a video of you performing, so myself, the type of music that I play and write is more of like lyrical, modern folk pop type music where there's lyrics and there's storytelling. But someone like yourself playing the classical music, there's no words, there's no melody. But when I watch you play, I mean, you are telling a story with the guitar with no lyrics, and it's very interesting to watch. And is that something that obviously you've worked on over your career, but telling a story with each song, how much does that go into it with you?
A lot. I think just about every piece of music has a story to tell. And when you have a song, with lyrics, the lyrics obviously tells you what the music is about, what it's trying to express, and how it is developing. When you don't have the lyrics, you have to figure out what that story is anyway. And I often tell students, because I've done it myself, to even to put lyrics to a piece of music as a way to identify what is happening every moment of the music, and so you can tell a story. Of course, there's these pieces by the Mendelssohn, the songs without words, and I think in many ways, what we play is like that. And again, for me specifically, it is about storytelling with the music, and that's how I teach it. I tell them, the stories behind. We need to figure out what they are and bring it out.
Have you ever written, and maybe I just couldn't find it, but do you have songs as well that you've ever written or performed that you sing as well, or has it always just been playing?
No. I mean, I cannot sing to save any part of my body. So,
okay.
but and I was notoriously bad inside singing too. So no, I mean, I did try to compose at one time. When I was still in studying at the college level at Peabody, but what would happen was that I would spend hours and hours and hours and hours, to write like 1 minute of music. I mean, and then the next day I would look and I say, what the heck is this? So it was actually taking too much of my time. So I then just decided just to forget about it intentionally, don't even try it and just play. Even to these days, it's actually kind of come back the thought of maybe trying again, but I don't see it happen. I think to begin with, I don't even have the time for it anyway. So
okay. You have another great quote, and I'll reference it when you talked about someone in a past interview asked you about what were the qualities of a great performer, and your answer was really great. And you talked about some people have amazing technique, but nothing to say. Could you maybe explain that a little bit and what you meant by that?
You just mean that, God, it sounds like something I would have said a long time ago.
Like 2009, I found it.
Oh, no, well, not all that far, anyway. So, I mean, I must have been thinking of something, but yeah, I mean, what happens is that obviously you can be a great instrumentalist, and you can be able to play the heck out of an instrument, but that doesn't mean that necessarily that you have a musical bone in your body, so that, I guess, is what I'm referring to. And
sure.
And some people also, so basically is that one could have a great technique, but that doesn't mean that one is going to make good music because of it. It just means that one gets around the instrument with a lot of facility. But there's also another aspect of it sometimes, which is that sometimes when one has a great technique, that in itself can really impress people and get a lot of attention. And sometimes a young player will forget to develop more the musical part just because they can impress so easily with a technique. So when I've encountered students like that, what I always tell them, just forget you have such a great technique, and see if you can be as impressive just with the music making, and if you can do that. So also there's a great quote that I heard from Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, and he said something, I'm paraphrasing it, that when somebody plays the piano, when you begin to play the piano, immediately all the notes are set right in front of you for you to press down and to begin phrasing, and trying to make music. When you do the violin, that it's so hard to you have to work so hard just to get the sound, so you might never even get to make music with it, or think of the music. And I think with the guitar, it's like probably even worse that way. And so it is a difficult instrument. It's technically a very difficult instrument to play as a solo instrument. Right. Meaning, if you play part of an ensemble, just play in a single line, or if you're accompanying just with chords, I mean, I don't think it's anything particularly difficult that way. But when you're playing, like classical things, having to play melody and accompaniment all together, and I think it can be quite challenging,
Yeah, and that's a great quote, and I share that sentiment of trying to get things out of the guitar. What types of music now, you're so seasoned and have so much mastery of the guitar, but are there any types of music that are still really challenging for you to try to play?
Oh boy, well, we are more comfortable, obviously, in certain areas than others, and if you are a classical musician and you don't specialize in a one particular area of style, and you're doing basically just any style, the further it goes away from what you're comfortable with, the more difficult it gets to go to the essence of the music, especially if you're trying to give a stylistically correct, performance.
Sure. Okay.
So I think I'm pretty flexible, and I love the differences between styles. Obviously, I'm more comfortable with some than others, but I don't know. I don't know if it was. I can't. I mean,
so is the Latin, Spanish type of style, is that more comfortable to you than, say, some other classical style?
Well, yeah. That's closer to me. So, but even for
Right.
example, I think I think this might describe. We had a master class here with the Brazilian guitarist. I mean, for classical musician, and they have this
Uh-huh.
style of of music of the choros, that's popular with them. And one of my students played a choro, although it wasn't really from a Brazilian composer, from Barrios, the Paraguayan composer. So, so the teacher, the Brazilian guy, told him, you're making that sound like a Caribbean bolero, So when I got up to the guys, who were you thinking of when you said that? because even I think it was a commentary. I think of my teaching of the piece to him, but it's a valid one, and I understood, because I mean, even if you get into let's say Latin American music, it's not all the same. I mean, it can vary a lot, and you can hear when somebody's very comfortable with specific style. Like if I play
Sure.
Brazilian things, I'm not going to understand it as well as a Brazilian, does. Now that doesn't mean that we might not make an interesting interpretation from it, and sometimes we can do that. But it's just a fact of it. Or if you're an American, you play jazz. That doesn't mean that you're going to do country and western well. You might, but they're different worlds.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great answer. Of all you've played thousands of stages and all over the world for many, many years. Can you recall, or do you remember being on any stage at some point and just really being taken aback by, how big the stage was as far as like the history of it or something like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, if you're talking about big, the I have played in the Royal Albert Hall in England,
Uh-huh.
and which is like, I think it's like 7,000 seats, and and it's pretty awe-inspiring. I mean, it's a big place, but I've also, I mean, I've played in the Hollywood Bowl few times, and that's also pretty amazing. And I also did a tour some years ago they were called the Night of the Proms, and it was a tour through Belgium and Germany, and they were all stadiums. There were like 20,000 people each night, and that was I had never seen, I had never been in front of an audience at large before. And the interesting thing is that, and it was also kind of intoxicating, because there were famous people there, playing, because it was always symphony orchestra, but it was classical and pop, something like classic pops
Okay.
and the pop. No, wait, yeah, classic pops and popular classics, something like to that effect. And I know, and for example, one of the people performing was Toto, the rock group with
Yes.
with Steve Lukather, who's an amazing player, and I was so impressed with what he was doing, and so it was really quite an event, and then from there, I remember going to play a solo recital in Warsaw, in Poland, in a hall that was I think 500 seats or so, not more than that. And I thought, oh my God, how is that going to feel just being there? And I was shocked when I loved it. Just to be in that room with the people, and none of the lights and all that stuff, and people screaming, and it was really
Yeah.
it was really nice. Not that I did not enjoy the other thing, but I remember that it was kind of like the calm after a storm, and
Sure. Yeah.
so it was I don't know. I thought it helped me understand what had happened.
Yeah. And how do you prepare to play a show in front of, say the 20, 30,000 as opposed to in front of the 500? Do you have a different routine, or is it the same? It doesn't matter, or can you remember that?
No, I wouldn't have known how to prepare. I wouldn't have known how to do it. I just it was just totally different from anything I had experienced before. I know also because also by the way, because these are these concerts were like, there were also a lot of young kids, and the parents were sitting more, and so there was a lot of drinking. So it was like, there was a lot of like yelling, but they were having a great time. And I had never been in a situation like that. I mean, in the classical concerts, everybody's going to be quiet, and these people were just screaming there. So it was different. It was really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Of all the things that you've done, I mean, you've just done so many things in your career and been nominated and won so many awards. But on kind of the flip side, what are some of the things that have been maybe more difficult in making a life in music?
Well, I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and I don't know how this came up, but for example, especially when my daughters were very young, I found it very difficult to travel, and I'll never forget one time leaving like Kennedy Airport from New York, and my daughter, I don't know how old she was, she was very young, like maybe 3 or 4 or something, I don't know, maybe a little more, and she would not look at me. It's sort of like she knew what was going to happen, that she would not
Mm.
see me for a while. I think that's a very hard. I think that for me that was very hard. Travel in recent times has become a lot more difficult. I mean, airports are war zones now, and
Right.
whereas in the past you could just buy a ticket and walk to the gate, and get on the airplane. Now you have to go through all the security and all that stuff, and so it's more difficult. Airports have gotten so big, also they've grown so much. And so as far as anything else, no, I mean, no, not really. I mean, just I mean, sometimes when you're touring, I mean, uh, sometimes it's very enjoyable, So sometimes if you're going to nice places, and sometimes it's really hard. I mean, sometimes when you're playing, like night after night, and for example, there are places like in Italy that very often the concerts can begin, easily at 9 o'clock, and they like to
Mm.
go eat afterwards,
Uh-huh.
and maybe you have an early flight the next day, and if you say no, they think you are full of yourself, and so this. I mean, you do a few of those, and you're gonna get tired. I,
Sure.
re-
Yes.
I remember one time going. I had worked with Aldi Meola, the great fusion player, and I remember running into him in an airport in Portugal. I don't know what he said, so I asked him, well, did you sleep? He said, "Sleep." He said, "What's that?" So
Right.
so yeah, so I mean, although I mean, in my field we're a lot more tame than those guys are, but it's yeah, that it can be
Right.
quite difficult. And I'm thinking more things. I mean, maybe the instrument not arriving, or maybe the suitcase is not arriving. I mean, it just those type of things.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Well, I know you're a very, very busy guy. And so I just have one or two quick questions for you as we end this. The one question I like to ask everybody that comes on this podcast is, what do you feel like some of the best investments that you've made in your career?
I started teaching when I was very young. I had not graduated yet from Peabody, and I was, I think, 22 or not quite yet when I was offered a job to teach at the Manhattan School of Music in New York, and in fact to open the guitar department in 1975. I remember the guy who was Stanley Bednar was his name. He was the head of the string department at the Manhattan School of Music in New York, and he told me, he said, a musician should always teach. And I took that to heart, and I've always done that. And I've always had made sure to do that. And I think it's made a huge difference in my life, because I think because of that, I have remained more of a of student of the instrument. I mean, as you're teaching, you learn about what you're doing, and I'm really happy that I've done that. Not to mention that now I have you know had a lot of students, and I have relationships, with most of them, or some of them, and I can enjoy the success, and it just made my guitar playing more rounded off more. When not only you do it, but you teach it. You can also have the conversation of what happens behind the scenes, as you play with the students. So that's something that I am so glad that I always did.
That's a great answer. That really is. My last question for you as we close, of all the things you've gotten to do over your career with music, what are the things that bring you the most joy and most satisfaction in your life in music?
Oh my, well, I mean, different things come to mind. I think somebody said, there's a quote that it's that music is what feelings sound like. And to me, music is about feelings that cannot be expressed, with words, and it's a whole language, and to me, it's about feelings. I say ultimately, it's about feelings. If it's not about feelings, I don't know what the heck else it could be about. So I would say that. I mean, I was also thinking that similar actually to the answer I gave you about the big concert halls and then the small one. That it's really great when you can play with somebody else that you respect and admire, and you learn so much, and that's pretty cool right there. But there's also something about being alone on a stage in a beautiful hall with a beautiful sound, with a quiet audience, and things are going well. And it's almost, there can be some nights where you feel almost like you can do no wrong, and then all of a sudden you begin to see angles in the music that you had not quite seen before, and maybe it also relates back to what you said about telling stories, which you say, oh, well, how about this? I mean, you're basically talking to the audience, listen to this, look at that, look where it goes, look where it turns, listen to this feeling, and that's probably the most enjoyable, and if you have a great day in a great space with a great sound and a nice audience, and your feelings are on the surface, and you just want to kind of embrace the audience with it, I think that's, to me, that's the utmost, in performing.
Well, Manuel, thank you so much for coming on this afternoon and sharing your thoughts. And it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. And I wish you luck going forward and all of the wonderful things that you have.
Thank you very much. It's been very nice. You've been very nice and very nice questions. I really have enjoyed it. Thank you for it.
Wow, that was really a lot of fun. And thank you so much to Manuel for sitting down and talking with me and sharing his thoughts on life and music. You can find Manuel's music on tonermusic.com, TONAR music.com, or on his website, which is BARRUECO.com. To find more information about our podcasts and our newsletter, dankrikorian.com, please sign up or rate us on iTunes. Until next time, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, keep making that beautiful work. We'll see you soon.